This is Denver. In 1986, it was a dying oil town with half-empty office towers. Today, it's one of the fastest-growing metros in America, home to nearly 3 million people. But here's what makes Denver's story different from every other mega city in the country. San Francisco leaned into tech. New York leaned into finance. Houston leaned into oil. Denver looked at its core industry and walked away from it entirely. Today, oil and gas represent just 2.5% of Colorado's GDP. The city that once had towers named Petroleum Building and Anaconda Tower now houses Palantir's global headquarters. So how did Denver pull off this transformation, and what did it cost? If you're interested in understanding how cities really grow, make sure to subscribe. The gamble that saved Denver. To understand where Denver is today, you have to go back to 1986. That was the year oil prices collapsed below $10 per barrel. The OPEC crisis did not just hurt Denver's economy, it gutted it. Office towers stood half empty, energy companies fled, unemployment spiked. Denver suddenly found itself at a crossroads that would determine its fate for the next 50 years. The city had two options. Option one was to wait for oil to rebound and hope things would return to normal. That's what Tulsa did. Tulsa waited and never recovered its economic dynamism. Option two was far more radical. Engineer a complete economic pivot away from oil and toward industries that did not even have a major presence in Denver yet. Denver chose option two. The seeds had actually been planted a decade earlier. In the 1970s, city planners had envisioned something called the Denver Technological Center, a hub designed to attract tech firms and communications companies. When oil collapsed, that vision became the template for survival. Instead of one dominant industry, Denver would build 9 distinct economic clusters. Instead of depending on commodity prices, Denver would depend on talent and innovation. It was a massive gamble, and by the 2000s, it was clear the gamble was paying off. The industries that replaced oil. The diversification happened faster than anyone expected. Tech employment started growing at 12.6% annually. By 2023, Denver had 129,040 tech professionals, and they were not making oil money. The average tech salary in Denver reached $113,457, more than double the metro average of $53,500. An entirely new economic class was being built from scratch. But statistics only tell part of the story. Company relocations tell the rest. In 2009, DaVita, a major healthcare company, moved its headquarters from California to Denver. When asked why, executives cited the talent pool, access to mass transit, cost of living, and quality of life. That phrase would become a pattern. SendGrid, a homegrown email infrastructure company, was acquired by Twilio for $3 billion, creating wealth, credibility, and a generation of entrepreneurs who suddenly had capital to invest in the next wave of startups. Then came the signal that changed everything. In August 2020, Palantir quietly announced it was moving its global headquarters from Silicon Valley to Denver. State officials later called it a trigger that created a pipeline of prospects from the Bay Area. When a company valued at tens of billions of dollars chooses your city over San Francisco, other companies pay attention. Here's what most people get wrong about who's actually moving to Denver, though. Most people assume Denver's growth is driven by tech workers fleeing California. It seems obvious. Housing costs exploded on the coast, remote work became the norm, and workers started looking for cheaper alternatives with good weather and outdoor access. But the data tells a completely different story. Between July 2020 and July 2024, approximately 56,500 international immigrants moved to Metro Denver. During that same period, Denver actually lost about 14,000 residents to other U.S. states. Natural population growth, births minus deaths, added another 46,000 people. The math is clear. Denver's growth isn't being driven by tech refugees. It's being driven by immigration and family formation. This changes everything about how you understand the city. Denver's largest age cohort is 28 to 33 years old. These are people in prime family formation years, buying homes, having children, putting down roots. State demographer Kate Watkins explained, "Being a younger city, we tend to have more family formation, household formation, and as a result, a bit more population growth when it comes to births." Aging metros like New York and Los Angeles don't have this advantage. They actually lost residents between 2020 and 2024. Denver isn't San Francisco 2.0. It's something different, a magnet for working-age immigrant families seeking affordable alternatives to coastal cities. And that younger, immigrant-driven growth creates entirely different pressures than a pure tech boom would. The secret infrastructure nobody talks about. When cities compete for talent, they usually talk about jobs, salaries, and cost of living. Denver has something else, something that does not show up in most economic development presentations, but shows up constantly in relocation decisions. Outdoor recreation is not a nice-to-have perk in Denver. It is core economic infrastructure. The numbers are striking. Outdoor recreation contributes $17.2 billion to Colorado's GDP each year, which is 3.2% of the entire state economy. And the activities driving that growth are exactly what Denver offers. Biking is up 27% nationally, snow sports are up 25%, and hiking continues to surge. When companies and workers make relocation decisions, proximity to the Rockies, skiing, and what survey respondents call room to roam are not secondary benefits. They are primary draws. The city understood this early and built its urban design around it. Public spaces like the Commons on Champa Square host over 200 entrepreneurship events annually. The collaborative culture is not accidental. It is intentional urban design meant to attract and retain exactly the kind of workers Denver needs. But here is the problem. The lifestyle appeal that attracted massive growth is now threatened by that very growth. Building a city from contaminated ground. The physical transformation of Denver is staggering when you see it side by side. In 1990, Denver was what locals called a cow town, with a forgettable skyline, an essentially abandoned downtown, and lower downtown sitting as contaminated industrial wasteland that required brownfield redevelopment before anyone could build there. Today, those same sites tell a different story. A 19-acre former hospital site at Sloan's Lake became a mixed-use development with LEED Gold certification, preserving a chapel from the 1930s as a community focal point. Dahlia Square, once a contaminated site nobody wanted, now houses a 12,000-square-foot medical clinic, senior housing, and mental health services. The Denver Tech Center transformed into a gleaming 270,000-square-foot office campus connected by light rail to the rest of the metro. In total, the city demolished nearly 1 million square feet of contaminated industrial structures while installing the region's first green stormwater detention system. Denver had room to grow precisely because it had so much land that needed remediation. The contamination that seemed like a liability became an opportunity, but that growth came at a cost nobody fully anticipated. The affordability collapse. The numbers are brutal. In 2005, the median home price in Denver was $260,600. By 2022, it was $619,500, a 138% increase. Median rent jumped 77% between 2019 and 2021 alone. During that same period, median income rose only 32%. The gap between what Denver workers earn and what Denver housing costs has become a chasm. The housing deficit now sits somewhere between 13,000 and 31,000 units, depending on which estimate you trust. 51% of Colorado renters are considered cost-burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on housing. As Kelly Caulfield of the Common Sense Institute noted, price growth slowing in Colorado is a welcome sign, but the bottom line is that relative to incomes, prices remain much higher than they have been for the last 2 decades. Denver successfully attracted the workers it now cannot afford to house. This creates a paradox. The city needs workers to grow, but it cannot house the workers it needs. And the data shows this paradox is already having consequences. The slowdown nobody predicted. In 2015, approximately 43,450 people moved to Denver on net. The 2025 projection, just 13,193, a 70% decline. Projections show net migration peaking at 29,272 in 2028, then dropping 20% the following year. By 2050, annual net migration is expected to fall to just 12,550. Read that again. The city that became one of America's fastest-growing metros is projected to see migration slow to a trickle within a generation. The very success that made Denver attractive is undermining the conditions that attracted growth in the first place. Some suburbs are already closing schools due to declining enrollment. Jefferson County faces an aging population even as the core city stays young. The virtuous cycle that made Denver successful, affordable housing attracting workers, workers attracting companies, companies creating more jobs, may be breaking apart. And downtown tells an even more complicated story. Despite all the suburban transformation, downtown Denver remains fragile. Foot traffic sits at just 67% of 2019 levels. More than 13 million square feet of office and retail space remain vacant. The pandemic shift to remote work hit Denver's urban core hard, and it has not fully recovered. In November 2024, Denver voters did something remarkable. They approved $570 million in bond funding specifically for downtown revitalization. The measure passed with over 80% support. That overwhelming margin suggests residents recognize something that the growth statistics might obscure. The megacity is still being built, and its center remains uncertain. The question becomes whether intervention can reverse the trajectory, or whether Denver's downtown will follow the path of other cities that never recovered their urban cores after remote work became the norm. The questions Denver can't answer yet. Denver's future depends on tensions that have not been resolved. The first is the growth trajectory itself. Will net migration stall permanently, or is this just a cyclical correction driven by housing costs? Experts genuinely disagree about whether this reflects temporary dynamics or a fundamental loss of competitiveness against other Sunbelt metros. The second is a housing paradox. Denver's inclusionary housing policy requires 8 to 12% of new units be priced below market rate. The intention is good, preserve affordability, but early evidence is mixed. Some analyses suggest this requirement can paradoxically reduce overall housing supply by raising development costs enough that projects do not get built at all. The policy designed to solve the housing crisis might be making it worse. The third involves the outdoor economy that defines Denver's identity. That economy depends on room to roam. As Denver densifies and as water scarcity in the West intensifies, will skiing and hiking remain accessible, or will they become luxury activities that price out the workers who moved here for them? And then there is the Palantir question. A company that works with ICE on immigration enforcement quietly relocated its global headquarters to Denver with minimal public debate. How much does Denver's growth depend on companies that many of its residents might oppose if they knew more about them? What Denver proved and what it revealed. Denver proved something important. Legacy industries can be abandoned for diversified, innovation-driven economies. A dying oil town can become a tech hub. A contaminated industrial core can become a vibrant urban center. Cities from Pittsburgh leaving steel to Detroit leaving auto manufacturing are now studying Denver's model. But Denver also revealed a trap. Success in attracting growth can destroy the conditions that enabled it. The affordable housing that drew families is gone. The room to roam that drew outdoor enthusiasts is filling up. The workers the economy needs cannot afford to live in the city that needs them. Denver is still building its mega city future. Whether it succeeds depends on solving problems it created by succeeding in the first place. That might be the most important lesson Denver has to offer. Not how to grow, but what happens after you do. If you enjoyed this, check out one of the videos on screen and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching.